Cool. So a lot of you have kind of heard of the term UX. It's actually bandied around a lot. It's become a little bit of a kind of accepted term within design circles that if you're a designer or a graphic designer, you're also UX. We actually want to kind of educate you today on what UX is all about. One of the benefits of understanding UX is that when you actually come to have to do anything that involves UX, you're well informed about it. You can actually talk about it intelligently. And that's one of the main purposes of today, is to actually inform you. So that if you're going to any agency, say like ourselves or another agency, and you want to talk about UX, you can actually have an intelligent conversation. And if people are kind of saying to you, yeah, look, here's this amazing process and it's going to cost you $60,000, you can probably go, well, maybe it's not quite so necessary because, I went to this UX4GOV seminar and they actually showed us a few different options. So we're hoping that at the end of today, you're informed, you have a little bit of hands-on experience in doing some testing and user research, and you also understand the process that UX has to go through in order to create a good UX experience for users. So look, you probably know that UX is desirable. Bad UX should be avoided. But let's kind of break it down just a little more about what UX actually is. So first of all, good UX means that people can be successful when using your site. So they can actually do what they came to the site to do. Number one, it has to be successful. While they're on it, they should be efficient about what they're doing. So they shouldn't have any obstructions. It shouldn't be difficult to understand. Lastly, people should enjoy using your site. They should enjoy actually going through the process. Visually, it should look good. The phrasing should be really easy to understand. And at the end of it, they should go, yeah, look, that was easy to do. I actually enjoyed that. I'm going to come back again and do the same thing. So yeah, successful, efficient, and enjoyable. I want to show you some examples of good UX and bad UX. So first of all, you might need to do a bit of slow breathing. I want to show you some really bad UX. So this is a classic site that's actually been around for many years, but it's still, unfortunately, highly successful. But highly successful due to the probably the bombastic, outgoing personality of Valentine Ling, this lady who actually runs this show. So she is prominent. She drives artillery tanks down the main street, I think it's down King Street in London, with her logo all emblazoned over it. So terrible site. And when I was doing a bit of preparation for this, I had a look at this site. Within about 10 seconds, I actually got a headache. So sorry for that. But that's an example of a site that actually has been designed not with the user in mind, more with the personality of the owner in mind. Okay, so I want to show you something good. This is Airbnb. Airbnb, you actually may not realise how good the UX is on this site, because when you use it, everything just flows so nicely. I'll give you an example. So first of all, if you go and search for a location, so just say you type in the word Perth. So instantly you get really good location matches. You can click on it. As soon as you click on it, you're presented with the dates. You can really simply put in the two date options, the start date and the end date. You can then jump across to your guests, the number of guests that you want to put in, add it, and then hit search. So we've stepped through this. If you were coming back to this site, you would do this complex operation within a few seconds. You wouldn't have to think about it. There wouldn't be kind of any ambiguity, oh, have I done the right thing, how long am I actually staying for, how many people are there. It's really clear. The results you've got are really targeted and really focused. This is great UX. It's actually happened as a result of hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent on UX, getting lots of users in, doing research on them, testing them, asking them, doing some testing, like actually doing biometric testing on them. It's all, a lot of work's been put in to make something this easy and this good. We're going to be using a little bit of technology today, a bit of terminology today. So just so you kind of are clear with what the terminology we're using. We talk about the term user journey a lot. So a user journey is really a set of steps that a user takes from when they enter the website to when they leave it. That's a user journey. And a user journey can be as chaotic or as simple and focused as you'd expect. We talk about tasks a lot. So a task is a set of very tightly, directly related steps. A task could be something like searching for a particular item, or doing a pet registration, or doing a payment. Finally, a term we're going to use a lot is IA, which means information architecture. And it really refers to the structure of your site. So structure of pages, structure of navigation, how it all hangs together. Okay, how do you create good UX? We do it in 3 stages, and these stages we're going to break down a little bit more throughout today. So we kind of want you to be comfortable with it. But to create good UX, first of all, we do a discovery phase, which is really doing the research, the user research, the business research, getting to understand really what the requirements are, doing some user analysis, background checks. Next, we do the fun stuff, which is doing design. So we actually design the pages, we design the wireframes, we design the information architecture, we design personas. We have a lot of fun in the design stage. The last stage is we validate what we've done. So we actually need to go through and actually check it out. So we use analytics and heat mapping, a lot of other checks to go, yep, we know we've got the UX right. So in UX, what is your first step? So you're all here as marketers, communication people, web administrators, web developers. What should be your main job, your first step in UX? Well, it's actually accessibility. So some of you probably didn't expect, but as government website administrators and owners, accessibility is something you have to be aware of. It's not a lot of fun sometimes, but it's something that actually does need to be factored in to the way you manage your content. So, let's do a quick chat about accessibility. By the way, today we've got a lot to cram in, so we're probably going to be flying through it pretty quickly. But if anybody has a question as we're going through, feel free to stick up your hand and we'll try and answer it. If we can't, then we'll catch up afterwards and cover it. Okay, so as a government organisation, you are required to comply with the Disability Discrimination Act of 1992. So that actually applies to everything. So how people can access buildings, how people can actually access your parks and your open spaces, how they have signs on their streets, how they actually understand the processes within your local government. Part of this is actually creating an accessible website. So in order to comply with the current government regulations, you need to meet WCAG 2.0 level AA. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a very specific condition that you have to meet. So WCAG 2 has got 3 levels in it: level A, level AA, and level AAA. It used to be level A until about 7 years ago. Now we moved into AA. It's a bit harder. There's a bit more work involved. To find out more information, we use the Digital Transformation Australia site. We're going to be sending out some handouts after today where we're going to be sending you a heap of links. So if we're talking about a link or a website, it'll be in the handouts we send you. Alrighty, so accessibility, there's a bit of good news and there's a bit of bad news. The good news is accessibility actually helps everyone. I'll give you an example. So if you create a building and on that building you create an accessible ramp, then you have people like tradespeople who can actually use that ramp to, say, get refrigerators and heavy gear in. So it's not only useful for the person with the wheelchair, it's actually of great use to other people as well. Another example is if, just say at home, you make your bathroom accessible. So you decide to put accessible taps on your on your basin. It means that if you're carrying a child in one arm, you can still actually use the tap and wash your hands and bump your elbow. Much easier to do. So accessibility has actually helped you there. Another example is on your website, if you put alt text on your images, it actually makes it not only easier for screen readers and disabled people, but it also makes it easier for Google to scan your site and make sense of everything. So the effort put into accessibility has a lot of other good outcomes. The bad news about accessibility, it's actually really difficult to guarantee that you have met level AA. So if somebody actually says to you, like, we can guarantee that your site is level AA, probably would be a little sceptical of it. So there are organisations that provide a certification level, but they do extensive testing with actual disabled users to go through and verify page by page. Generally also, you will only get certain parts of your website that will fully comply. And this is something that needs to be put into your accessibility statement. So when you say our site is level AA, you should be saying there may be some exceptions. Things like Google Maps. Google Maps aren't accessible. Things like some of your forms may not be accessible. So it's good to let people know. But look, it's very difficult to validate it as level AA. Another example of the problems with accessibility is that the requirements generally lag a long time behind technology. So the requirements for responsive design on a mobile only came out about 7 years ago. But around 8 years before that, there'd been there'd been responsive design put on mobiles. So in the meantime, in that intervening time, there was actually no specification for how responsive design would handle on a mobile. So a lot of time you're taking a guess. So it's not exact. We're going to do a really quick hands-on demo of checking for accessibility. Just before Siobhan starts this up, what we're going to do is we're going to use a tool called Wave. We're going to send you a link to this in the handout. But Wave is a plugin that you can use in your browser to check accessibility compliance. Remember I said there's a bit of bad news about accessibility, is it's quite difficult to actually verify exactly that you have met a compliance level. And I'll kind of illustrate that today. So Siobhan, if you can just crank up the Wave plugin. So having cranked up the Wave extension, let me just turn around. What it's done is it's now highlighted some areas on the page that have got possible accessibility issues. So remember, this is Airbnb. So this is a well-refined, well-used site that's had extensive testing, potentially for accessibility as well. When you use Wave, we generally advise you to uncheck a lot of these items on the right-hand side. So Siobhan, if you can just uncheck, go right down to the bottom and uncheck ARIA. So just go up a bit. And now go up one more level and uncheck the structural elements and then uncheck the features. Okay, so on the right-hand side, we've now cleaned up the view. This is really just for discussion today, make it a little bit easier to see what's going on. In the right-hand side, you've got all these little red active cells, these little red active items. When you click on, say, Go Near, what it will do is it will tell you what possible accessibility issue may exist at that point. The thing you've got to remember is this is a tool that is a little paranoid. What it's trying to do is to detect any possible issues that might come up. So if it thinks there is a possible issue, it's going to flag it. What it often means is that actually it's a false positive. So if you go down further and click on, say, unique stays, so there's a little orange square to the right hand side of that, it's telling you it's got redundant title text. So this is also another slightly misleading accessibility issue. So redundant title text is actually not exactly a contravention. It's more of an inconvenience for disabled users. If you go down a little further, right down to the very bottom, there's an underlined link next to AUD. So when you click on that, it says you've got underlined text. There's actually nothing wrong with underlined text. but it's just flagging this as being a possible inconvenience to disabled users. So this is giving you a bit of an idea. So when you come to actually validate your accessibility, it's not exactly black and white. You need a little bit of experience to kind of interpret the results to really make sense of it. There's a really easy accessible test you can do. And if you can just jump out. One of the things we advise you to do with any page is to navigate around it using the tab key. Because when you do this, you're actually emulating what a person does who can't use the mouse. This is actually a very typical action for disabled users. So Siobhan, if you can actually just quickly tab through and just show us the elements on the page. So see, Siobhan hasn't used a mouse to get where she is. She's just used the tab key. She can just navigate through the points. So she can even jump into this particular dialog box. So if you just keep tabbing Siobhan, now just use the down key, hit the enter key. So Siobhan has actually been able to select this particular date using the tab key, the enter key. This is an example of a site that actually has been developed with accessible users in mind. Thanks, Siobhan. So look, just quickly, to stay compliant, here's a couple of pointers for you. Check your important pages periodically with Wave. What it will do is it will at least let you know of any kind of possible issues that may be arising. So install the Wave plugin, have a look at your important pages. We advise you to run a manual accessibility test around every 18 months to 24 months. So this is actually where you get somebody like ourselves to manually run through a page, and we have all of these test scenarios we do to validate a page. There's tools you can use automatically like Sort Site. So Sort Site will actually go through your site and will pick out really obvious items. The other thing is to actually update your accessibility statement to make sure that you are indicating which parts of the site are not currently valid. So that's something you should be doing on your website. Generally, most of you will have an accessibility link either at the very top or at the very bottom of your page. So that needs to be linking off to your description of how well you comply. So look, just in conclusion, accessibility is not black and white. It is a little hard and needs a little bit of interpretation to understand. And we'd advise you to get an expert in occasionally to actually review your pages manually, just to give you some feedback on how you're going. Thanks very much.